Welcome back. Our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, has covered a lot of stories in a lot of places, many of them dangerous, hazardous, never quite like this, however. Sunday marks the one-year anniversary of the earthquake that triggered the tsunami in Japan, which then led to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. To this day, that area, for good reason, is called the Exclusion Zone, and that's where Richard went. He found that time had stopped and life has yet to return as Japan deals with the fallout.
A year ago, the earth suddenly snapped and Japan was convulsed by the most powerful earthquake in its history. An hour later, a massive tsunami swept 6 miles inland, swallowing entire towns and setting off a triple meltdown at a nuclear complex on the coast near the city of Fukushima. When the 3 reactors exploded, a cloud was shot into the sky of steam mixed with particles of radioactive cesium. Downtown Fukushima was just 40 miles away.
My name is Koyo Abe, and I'm a monk in Jonji Temple in Fukushima. When the nuclear accident happened, I thought I shouldn't run away, but instead confront this crisis head on.
Monk Koyo Abe and Fukushima City were soon under the radioactive cloud. It started to snow, each flake bringing down the cesium on the city of 300,000 people. There was no evacuation.
What happened to Fukushima when that snow filled with radioactive particles started falling on this city?
We were suddenly faced with a new reality, where everything was contaminated by radiation, and the snow that would never melt began falling on us.
How do you see the mentality of Fukushima having changed after this terrible incident?
Fukushima city government declared that it's safe to stay, but the information has been contradictory. So there's friction between people who believe that it's best to leave and those who've decided to stay. The same goes for food. There's now a divide between people who continue producing and those who've given up. Even families are divided.
My name is Akio Suzuki. After the nuclear accident, the school said we should keep our children indoors.
A year later, Mrs. Suzuki still doesn't let her daughter Shori play outside. But in this warm and loving home, a reminder of the fallout is only a page turn away.
Blast. That day, there was an explosion. Rain cloud brought us nuclear fallout. We were covered with invisible dust, which might harm our health. I just thought this book was so sad.
This is not just a children's book. This is a real school. Your daughter goes to this school.
That's right.
When you found out that the school was contaminated, what did the parents of these 23 little children do?
The nursery said that if we scraped the soil, the radiation levels would come down. So to protect our children, they asked for our help.
And the parents and teachers all pitched in.
We put our strength together to scrape off dangerous dust slowly and carefully.
We started seeing a ray of hope coming slowly to Fukushima. But that didn't happen, did it?
As soon as the rain came and dragged the particles into new areas, the radiation levels went right back up.
Yes, in Japan we call them hot spots. Our hot spots are over here.
This brick here under this drainage pipe, it is a hot spot.
It was higher before, but no matter what we do, that is as low as it goes.
This school that was so hopeful, work of hope, is closing down. Shori is now 6. Has her personality changed as a result of all of this?
One by one, her friends have left. So I think she's feeling very lonely. But the hardest thing for her to take is that her big sister has moved away. Just thinking about it makes me cry.
How are you holding up financially? Have you received any compensation from the government, from anyone?
No, because the government's policy is that it's safe to live here. So it's tough to leave, even if you are worried about your child's health.
So how do you clean up microscopic particles of cesium from hundreds of thousands of homes in an area the size of Connecticut? Critics say it's impossible.
I'm Fukushima City's disaster expert, Toshikai Kusano.
Kusano, a former colonel, leads the cleanup in Fukushima City.
People we've spoken to feel that the government isn't giving them the full story and is downplaying the dangers. What is the government doing here to try and make the ground safe, the schools safe, the trees safe, the water safe?
We must decontaminate everything. The mountains, rivers, roads, and farms. We are cleaning up all areas where people live.
You collect the dirt that is contaminated with radioactive material. You collect the water. Then what do you do with all of this stuff? It's an enormous amount of toxic waste.
The city has prepared a temporary holding space, and that's where it is kept. Eventually, the national government will bury it underground.
But no one wants all of Fukushima's radioactive soil, and the city has run out of storage space. At a town hall meeting in Mrs. Suzuki's neighborhood, Colonel Kusano asks residents to let the city bury the radioactive soil in their backyards. The residents aren't pleased.
There have been no assurances from city officials that everything is okay. And now they've sprung this on us, so everybody's concerned.
The people of Fukushima are really frightened. So it's important to meet residents and to communicate with them directly to remove their fears. We can definitely make this cleanup work.
How would you assess the government's cleanup efforts?
It's not working at all. There's no way you can put all that soil in a temporary deposit.
So monk Kuyu Abe has opened the gates of his ancient monastery and sent out volunteer cleanup crews to scrape away radioactive dirt. Like this especially dangerous hotspot under an overpass next to a school.
This is a hot spot. It'll be a year before the city gets to this area, so to prevent children from being radiated, we've decided to remove the contaminated soil ourselves.
If you touch your on your skin or inhale, very dangerous.
But just how dangerous is this dirt? That's what these parents want to know. Cesium has a radioactive half-life of about 30 years, so it's not going away soon. And over time, there is an increased cancer risk, small for adults, but 10 times higher for children.
If we don't take possession of the radioactive waste, we can't bring back the smiles of the people.
Monk Koyuabe is trying to ease parents' fears and put this stuff underground. He's donated land above his temple to store radiated soil.
The government says that your efforts, while appreciated, are illegal, that you are stockpiling, in effect, nuclear waste on your property.
If there's no place to keep it, you can't decontaminate. And if you can't clean it up, you can't live there. So your only option then is to run away.
Run away, like they had to in Okuma, radiated for decades to come. The town that died. The calendars in this once busy factory haven't changed since Japan's massive earthquake.
My name is Hisami Iwamoto, president of IC Electronics. When the earthquake struck on March 11th, I was in the middle of preparing a shipment of our products.
Iwamoto can't ship electronics or anything from his factory anymore. It's in a radiated, sealed-off area called the Exclusion Zone that extends 12 miles around the site of the world's second-worst nuclear meltdown.
There are buildings, there are cars, and until yesterday, there were people. They were friends, but the very next day, there was no one.
Access to the Exclusion Zone is forbidden, but former residents can make brief visits to collect valuables.
We've just entered into the Exclusion Zone. There are houses here, restaurants,
Sushi and radishes, it looks like.
schools, factories. This was a densely populated area, and now it's all empty. Nobody's here at all, and it's very eerie.
And very radiated.
So how far are we away from the plant itself?
About 5 kilometers.
As we got closer to the reactor, our monitors screamed in alarm. Radiation levels were 100 times higher than normal levels of about 0.2.
We're at 17.3, 17.7. We've already reached 19. Now it's at 22, 23.
The area in the immediate vicinity around the power plant itself is still very much a hotspot.
It's even hotter here. These rare images show the mangled nuclear plant today. It will never, can never, operate again. Next stop on this tour, Iwamoto's hometown of Okuma. A year ago, population 10,000. Today, 0.
This drugstore has been like this since the earthquake struck. All of the bottles thrown onto the floor, a moment frozen in time, entire towns abandoned, no one's coming back.
The only sign of life here, herds of feral cattle, abandoned by their owners.
The bull in there, watch out.
People left in a hurry, leaving clothes behind at a laundromat.
It reminds me of when I was a kid. They used to show in school these day after movies, what would happen in the event of a nuclear holocaust, how the world would become radiated. That's what it feels like here.
This is a ghost town.
What's wrong?
Look over here. There's someone's child's toy scooter, the garage door's down, basketball hoop up. Somebody lived here. It's as if some sort of plague came over the town.
Yes, paf, and they all disappeared at once.
This was your house?
New house.
2 weeks after the explosion, almost every house was looted. And because the earthquake destroyed the doors, it was easy.
So all that damage was from the earthquake. So it's like you were attacked twice. First the earthquake hit, and then once you survive that, then you get this cloud of radioactive dust raining down on the city.
Actually 3 times, but then we looted.
Oh, and then you were looted. Yes, I forgot about that.
When we were there today, you seemed to be able to laugh at the situation, even joke about how strange it was.
This was my office.
This was your office? You still have your jackets and ties ready to go?
How have you been able to retain a positive spirit throughout all of this?
Since I can't return to the past, I think of what I can do next, and then I point myself in that direction. In my head, I'm only thinking about starting a new life, doing new work in a new land.
What do you do with all of this area, miles and miles around the plant, that is useless, that is dangerous? Do you just write it off and forget it ever existed and never go back?
They'll never get rid of the radiation, so they should completely seal this area off and dump all the contaminated material from the rest of the country here.
You think the town should be sacrificed for the good of the other communities?
That's right. In my mind, there's no more Okuma. This isn't just a ghost town, it's a town of death.
My name is Masami Yoshizawa. I am the manager of the Namie Ranch. This is my neighbor's cattle barn, where cows were left without water or food.
So this was a row of cattle, all in their pens, all unable to leave, that starved to death. How did you feel when you saw this?
If the same thing happened in my barn, I would have gone crazy.
Like their counterparts in Montana or Texas, Japanese ranchers can be an independent sort. Although their ranch is now in the exclusion zone, Yoshizawa and Murata have refused to accept the compensation they'd get for slaughtering this herd. They're lone holdouts refusing to leave.
It is a beautiful piece of land, and I can understand why you would want to stay and keep this ranch going. But there was a nuclear disaster here, and the land is contaminated.
I know those animals have no commercial value, but for ranchers, cattle are like family. They are living creatures just like us, and we couldn't bring ourselves to slaughter them for no reason.
We won't flee from this land. We won't abandon these cattle. Come outside and you'll be able to see more clearly.
This is a man who just refuses to give up. He's watching the nuclear site 24 hours a day, still living here. He's got pictures of his cows streaming out on the internet. He will not accept defeat.
That's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
Yeah, it's down on the coast, over the hill, over those trees down by the water.
You can see the cranes working as they try to cover the building.
They've even dubbed their radiated cattle farm a sign of hope.
What is it you're hoping for? That the problem's going to go away, that the cleanup will be faster, that there'll be more compensation? What?
Now it's our hope that everyone here can regain the life they once had. But to help people return in the future, we should study how radiation has affected those cattle and develop new safety guidelines.
So you'd like to turn the exclusion zone into a kind of laboratory where people can study the effects of radiation and learn about it in case there were ever another nuclear disaster somewhere else.
That's right.
You told me earlier, you think Japan still needs nuclear power. You saw what a nuclear power plant did to your town, your house, your life. How can you still say that Japan needs these plants?
Japan doesn't have any natural resources, and for 50 years they turned nuclear power into the main source of energy for the country. That's the reality. Otherwise, Japan won't be able to produce new products.
I think I know the answer to this, but what do you think of nuclear power?
If we can't control it, we shouldn't use it.
Richard Engel back with us. Because you can't live there, you can't have your little daughter wearing a mask and having a hot spot in your front yard. Are we going to see this huge population shift? Is it already underway? And do they get compensated?
The people who lived in the actual exclusion zone have gotten some compensation. Not a lot, $15,000 to $30,000. It's an initial payment. But those are just the people who live in that 12-mile radius. The people who live in Fukushima, however, haven't gotten anything because the government's position is that Fukushima can be cleaned up. And the woman who has hot spots in her yard, that's in Fukushima City. That's where they're trying to clean it up. So far she hasn't gotten anything, and they're just hoping that they can dig out all of these invisible particles.
But this stuff never leaves us. It never goes away. So localize this for us. If this had been New York, Chicago, LA, San Diego.
If you have a house, let's say in just outside New York, in any suburban town, and you have a couple acres or a half-acre plot, what they would have to do, what they would try and do, is hose off your roof, then let all the water drip to the ground, and all the particles get washed away, theoretically. Then cut the leaves off all the trees. Once that's on the ground, dig up everything. Dig up the pebbles, the shrubs, the trees that were cut down.
Bury it in on
and
itself.
Bury it in on itself, which of course means it's going into the ground, it's going into the water. And by the way, it doesn't really work because next time it rains, the rain will find a little nook and cranny in the house that you didn't get, or it blows in from another house, or it gets washed down from the hills by the snow. So it doesn't go away. And you can reduce it, but you can't get it out of the system.
Consequences go on. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Great piece of reporting.